Welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Oxford Exxon Podcast. Chase Parham, Neal McCready, Clark Ford Studio here today. We're going to call Kyle Tucker in a second. Kyle covering the University of Kentucky basketball, a little bit of football, but mostly basketball for the Athletics. Been doing it a long time. He was in the Bahamas with the Wildcats. He was, I guess, in attendance or nearby when Cal gave his comments that ignited the Mark Stoops feud last week. Mitch Barnhart been really pleased with his two head coaches in that regard. So we'll preview Kentucky football a little bit. We'll talk some basketball and more here with Kyle coming up in just a couple minutes on the podcast. A podcast brought to you every single day by the Oxford Exxon, Highway 6 West in Oxford. You know about the lunch specials that are $5.69, 2 sides bread, 32-ounce drinks. You know about the Exxon mobile app where you download it, and it will automatically give you 1,000 bonus points. 1,000 bonus points is $10 at the pump whenever you wish at any Blue Sky location in Mississippi. And then also let them take care of dinner tonight. The ribs, hot plate, call ahead. They'll wrap it up, have it ready to go. Got side items, desserts, the whole deal there with the Oxford Exxon. Again, all Blue Sky locations, and coming to you from the Clark Ford Studio.
We are Clark Ford's in Amory, Mississippi. 662-257-1900 is that number. Call it. Ask for Corey Clark. Tell Corey what Ford product you're looking for. He'll send you a quote within 15 minutes in business hours. He get the quote. You can take it, do what you wish with it. You can use it elsewhere, or you can do what I've done, what I recommend that you do. I've done it several times now. Probably about to do it again shortly. And that is hop into a Clark Ford. 662-257-1900 is that number. Again, Corey wants to be your car guy. He wants to be your truck guy. They provide great service, great products. You'll see it when you deal with them. 662-257-1900. Guests, including Kyle Tucker, join on the Rafters Music and Food Hotline. Rafters Music and Food on the Square in Oxford. Great place to grab a burger, a po' boy, watch some games, just get out of the heat for a minute, whatever the case may be. And then also Rafters New Albany, and still for a couple more weeks, Rafters on the Water out at Sardis.
We get done with Kyle. We'll talk a little football. Let's post some stuff on the board the last couple of days, and media stuff yesterday. So we'll discuss that after we get done with the Wildcats. If anything, we're just kind of stalling for about 90 seconds, if we're being completely honest here on the show this morning.
Yes,
that is what we're doing, but that's all. It's all well and good. Lane appeared jovial, right?
Ooh.
Didn't think so?
No.
Thought he was pissed yesterday?
I wouldn't go pissed, but I wouldn't go jovial. Somewhere in between that on that spectrum.
I thought for him he was in a relatively good mood for him. Because I sense he has two different sarcasm situations. One when he's annoyed and one when he's like, okay, fine, whatever, but I'm just sort of screwing with you. And I felt like he was back and forth yesterday.
I don't think he likes that setup.
Even the room.
I don't think he likes the room.
Yeah.
The acoustics are horrible. It's not Ole Miss's fault. The people that are doing it are doing like Seth Austin, and those guys are kicking ass. I mean, they've made it.
You guys don't understand the environment we're in for the product they're able to get to you.
It's remarkable how good the product is, considering if you witness it live, you're like, I don't know how they're going to hear this because I can't hear it. Like I'm 6 feet from Lane, and my recorder's barely picking him up.
Yeah.
No, he's okay. He knew the quarterback question was coming because he I don't know how anybody else wrote it, but when he mentioned Knox, I was like, oh, thank you. You just gave me my lead. And I needed something. I'm like, okay, so there's nothing. There's no decision. Okay, cool. Fair enough. Give me something. And he did when he gave the Knox, FaceTimes him every day asking about, hey, you know, don't you? So tell me. And he's like, I really don't know.
It's 8, by the way.
And then he got the question. Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit. He got the question, is that bad? And he's like, no. And then I asked him, is there any chance you go into this with 2? And he didn't say no.
No.
He didn't say yes. But if you go back and listen to it and transcribe it and write it out, he didn't say no.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to Kyle Tucker of The Athletic here on the Rafters Music and Food Hotline. I've just got to dial his number. You'll hear all the ding.
And you hear him tell him he's live because he's not going to be aware of the way he's going to.
Okay. Little tune.
Hello.
Hey, Kyle, this is Neal McCready, Chase Parham. You're live, by the way, on our live stream. So Just
Okay.
to be fully aware. Appreciate
Good.
Appreciate you joining us, Kyle Tucker, longtime Kentucky beat writer with The Athletic. Now I know he's with. I think you were the Louisville Courier-Journal for a while. You've emerged over the last decade plus as the authority on Kentucky basketball, which is sad because there's 700 beat writers on that beat.
There's a lot. Yeah, it is not an undercovered beat. That's for sure.
Yeah. I guess we'll start here because I'm really interested in this. The Mark Stoops, John Calipari. I've been referring to it as sort of a kerfluffle. I'm curious. I'm viewing it from 30,000 feet. Obviously, just reading coverage from you and others. You were there with Calipari to some degree when this all started, and then you saw the fallout. Can you sort of walk us through it and sort of how you viewed it?
Yeah. So. I was in the Bahamas with the basketball team for a week. They're doing their once every 4 years foreign trip, which on the court and really off the court went really well for them. They played great. A lot of different guys looked really good. They looked to me like, a preseason top 5, if not higher team. This looks like a real contender. And so that was kind of the frustrating thing, I'm sure, for Calipari and others. It should have been just kind of this romping good time week where everybody gets excited about the program again. For as well as one could after losing in the first round to St. Peter's, Cal had a pretty flawless offseason. I think he had pushed all the right buttons kind of to win a lot of people back. He was reasserted himself in recruiting, and it looks like he's heading towards signing the number 1 recruiting class again. He kind of got his mojo back there. Made a really good coaching hire, did several sort of community-focused things. There have been a number of disasters in Kentucky, and he and the team have really stepped up and raised a lot of money and gone out into the communities and done things beyond raising money to I think, really endear them in a lot of ways. And that's something Cal's done the whole time he's been there. They've listened to a few little things the fans have said, and I feel like Cal has sort of tried to address some of those in the way that he says things, and just tweaking little things that fans say they want. Went out and scheduled a home and home with Gonzaga. To me, it felt like he was pushing all the right buttons, and they're playing great in the Bahamas. And then, and then after the first game they played, they had a film session, and he actually there were 3 reporters total that made the trip. He let all of us come watch that film session up in his hotel suite, and then after everybody left, he stayed and did kind of just a sit-down interview with us. And I had heard that he was kind of buzzing from some people around him that he had this big idea to build a practice facility, and he wanted to talk about it. So he talked a lot about the team, and at the end I just said, hey, tell me about this. What's the deal with this practice facility you're wanting to build? That was basically the question. A talk about that people, hey, talk about this. And he talked for 12.
Kyle, I've gotten instead of talk about, because if I ever do that to myself, I get so mad at myself it ruins like 2 days. And so I was like, hey, could you elaborate on?
Yes, I guess. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a snobby person about that. I have I'm Big J journalism guy, and it makes me mad if you say talk about. I mean, I think you ought to try to be more creative, but if it elicits a good response, or sometimes you're just kind of you're trying to slip your question in the crowd, talking over people. If you get something out and you get a good answer, I'm good with it. So anyway, I asked Cal, just tell me about this practice facility. I know nothing. I don't know any detail other than you're excited about some kind of practice facility you want. So he talks for 12 uninterrupted minutes, which Cal is known to do at times. And it went a lot of different ways, but the way it went off the rails for him was when he said, we're a basketball school, always have been, just like Alabama and Georgia are football schools, always have been. And then he said, no offense to our football team. I hope they win 10 games and go to bowl games. That's good for everybody. It helps me do my job better, but we're a basketball school. And that made Mark Stoops angry, and he made no secret about it. I tweeted that out with my story, and he quote tweeted it and said, I don't remember. It was, he kind of clapped back
Something
at
we
Cal's
beat in
quote.
SEC or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think he had another tweet, and then one of the assistants had a tweet, and then several UK football players had tweets, and Stoops was retweeting people saying that what Cal said was disrespectful, and it's like, oh my gosh, you know, and so as this is unfolding, you know, behind the scenes, I'm there with the whole basketball staff and team and everybody, and as I understand it, like Cal immediately understood that part of it was a mistake to say. And I don't think it's exactly what he meant to say. I'm not trying to like rewrite history and apologize for him, but the gist of the point he was trying to make was, if Alabama football or Georgia football say we need something, then they build it because you've got to support those flagship programs. And those were on his mind because both of those kind of premier SEC football programs have recently added some glittering new, you know, facilities upgrade that anyone could argue they didn't really need, like have to have. Like they probably still had nice facilities as they were, but they still built the new thing because that's what you do when you're a power and you're trying to stay in power. You build the bigger, newer, nicer thing before the next guy does. And that was kind of, I think, what he wanted to say, because a lot of people are saying Cal doesn't really need a practice facility. And he's basically saying, if Alabama football asks for one, they get it. If I'm asking for one, we should get it. And you can quibble with that. You can say that's entitled, arrogant, whatever. I don't think he'd care if people were mad about that, but it did bother him that it came off like sort of an affront to the UK football program. Cause I don't think that's what he meant to do. But it was taken that way, and I understand from Mark Stoops' perspective being frustrated about it. But what I think the crazy thing about this whole saga is that it was allowed to go on. You know, I don't think what Cal said would have really made much news if Stoops hadn't responded to it publicly and so strongly. I mean, Stoops made it a national story. And then, you know, from what I understand, Cal was trying to call him, was trying to apologize, was crafting different statements, wanting to put something out to kind of say, hey, I didn't mean to say that, and I'm sorry. And he was told by administration, don't say anything. Don't say anything else. We're just going to let this die. Except that then Mark Stoops and Mitch Barnhart, the AD, called a press conference 2 days later on Saturday and basically drop a nuclear bomb on Cal. You know, it was like, obviously Stoops was mad, and that wasn't a big surprise, but he kind of went in, you know, don't basically get my program's name out of your mouth kind of comment. But then Barnhart comes out, and he never talks to the media, and he's always very sort of subdued. And we hadn't heard from him in like 6 months. He calls a press conference and talks for 45 minutes angrily about this whole deal and talking about, you know, we're going to show gratitude here and, you know, all this other stuff, all the other sports. And he says basically, you know, that practice facility Cal wants is not on our plan. He essentially told Cal no in that press conference and called him, you know, ungrateful in essence. And then said something, the real eyebrow raiser from Barnhart was like, you know, these two men have been given every advantage to win championships, compete for championships since I've been here, and that'll always happen as long as I'm in the seat. And if that's not enough for them, coaches change all the time.
What I thought was fascinating, right? I mean, so I read two things into that, and tell me if I'm wrong, because you're there. I mean, you know it, and I could be completely wrong, and if I am, it won't hurt my feelings. I almost read that like there's a concern on Barnhart's part that in this era where football is bringing in so much money, and Stoops has made Kentucky, a program that typically, I don't think anybody would be offended by this, has typically been mediocre. He's made them more than that. He's made them competitive. He's made them a story into November. And he's maybe concerned that Stoops has some secret sauce at Kentucky that nobody else has, and maybe he looks at this and goes, look, Cal's great, but this is the preeminent basketball job in the country. And if Cal were to leave, the line of coaches that would be interested in this job would go from Lexington to Louisville. I mean, they would be lined up to take.
Yeah, and I think it also tells you that Mitch probably, and I believe this to be true just based on people I've talked to, probably has a short list already. of who, because you never know with Cal, like when that day might come, for one. But also, I think he's got 2 or 3 names in mind, and I think he's got some at least initial, confidence, confirmation that 1 or 2 of them would absolutely take that job, and they would be, I think you would get a big name. You could get somebody who's, been to Final Fours and maybe even won a national title in recent times that would be interested and would be a fit. Now, I say a fit, but the one thing you got to be careful of is you got to be careful what you wish for, right? Like some of the people that want change. Yes, Cal should have another title, or if not 2. Yes, he can be sort of braggadocious and abrasive, but he's also been about as perfect of a personality fit for the kind of job that Kentucky is as you could find. And if you don't sort of see it every day in every facet of what it takes to be the Kentucky basketball coach, it might be hard to understand. But there are not a lot of jobs like it. It is an all-consuming job where you have to recruit at the highest level, you need to win at the highest level, and you need to manage the spotlight and be in the spotlight at the highest level. And all you have to do is look at Billy Gillispie, before he basically was forced to hire Cal, which was true. He rejected Cal after Tubby Smith left, and Mitch Barnhart did, and hired Billy Gillispie. So just blindly trusting that Barnhart will get it right, or anybody would get it right. I don't know that I would necessarily do that, but also I think Gillispie was a good coach. He's like, I think, competing for Division II national titles and stuff like that now. He's a good coach, but he was a bad personality fit. He was a horrible personality fit for all that it entails to be the Kentucky coach. It's just, there's so much to it, and that job ate him alive in like under 2 years. He was pretty much off his rocker by the middle of year 1. I think it had already kind of swallowed him up. And so you got to be careful of that. You can say in theory that a guy, you just plug and play if you're Kentucky, but it's got to be not just a really great coach. He's got to be a certain personality, I think, to thrive there.
What is the temperature around Calipari? You're talking about a rabid fan base. He goes to, I guess, at least maybe the Final 4 or 5 of his first 6 years. Only been back once since then, or whatever it is. Yeah. 15. I know fans or whatever, but just in general, does he have basically a lifetime contract, or is there a point where this isn't good enough, even though he's always at least at the top of the media conversation every year?
Yeah. Well, the nice thing for him is fire him if you want to, and then give him his $25 or $30 million that you owe. He does. It's not truly a lifetime contract, but he signed, I think it was an $86 million extension 3 years ago. And if he gets through 2 more seasons, then he gets into the part where he can retire at any time and basically collect $1 million a year as an ambassador for the university. And so where he is in that contract, they could, if they got rid of him, they'd owe him a pile of money, and he'd just go somewhere else with that pile of money and probably win. I do think there's some frustration. I think after all this, there's definitely some friction in the administration, and that goes both ways. I think Cal wants what he wants. He thinks they need a practice facility, a shiny new one as a showpiece for the program, and clearly the athletic director doesn't want to give it to him, and now they've had this flap, and I'm sure Barnhart feels like his basketball coach sort of spoke out of school and went above his head speaking publicly on that, and I'm sure that Cal feels now sort of disrespected by the athletic director, maybe unsupported, to let the football coach dump on him when he's trying to squash it. So there's friction there, and I think it also does speak to kind of the juice Cal has in the larger Kentucky kingdom at this point, that the football coach could take big time shots at him, kind of clap back at him. And there's a segment of the fan base is like cheering it on, not saying, hey, don't attack our basketball coach. But all that said, before this happened, I felt like I said earlier, like Cal was kind of turning the tide. It seemed like he's gotten his recruiting energy and mojo back, and they're going to have a huge class. But, forget that. I think they have a real legitimate national title contender in this roster. It is, he could easily start 5 seniors. The guy who has started 5 freshmen before, and the king of one and done. He's got his oldest team yet. He had a really old team last year. I think they're even older this year. A ton of mix of transfers that were really good. Returning players who came back. They had a top 15 recruit who barely played last year, and he came back. Damian Collins. He was dunking all over everybody in the Bahamas. And then again, you've got a couple of really elite freshmen on top of that, and it just feels like they have a really good team. All of that to say, if he does get back to the Final Four, he could come out and say whatever he wanted about Mark Stoops, and people would probably acquiesce. It's all about winning, and so if they win big this year, then all will be well, I think, for Cal.
Yeah, you're right about Kentucky. By the way, I was in Fayetteville over the weekend, and there was a lot of buzz there about their team because it's so young and the 3 potential lottery picks and all that stuff. And if you asked people, you think this is a championship team, and they're like, look, we're good, but the best team in the league is probably the team that's usually the best team in the league. They are loaded, and so there's league wide there's a respect for not just Sheboy, but just the entire roster that he's got put together. And I think that puts an expectation on him, though, that going into this season, everyone's going to go, hey, Kentucky's even in a league that has a team as talented as Arkansas, and Arkansas is uber talented. Kentucky's going to be the team favored to win. Yeah,
I think without a doubt, you have to say that going into this year, this is a pivotal year for Cal, because in let me get myself together here. In 2019, they had a really, really good team that was up 10 in the Elite Eight against Auburn and blew it, lost in overtime to Auburn with a chance to get back to the Final Four. I think if they get to that Final Four, I think they might have been the most talented team left in it and could have won the thing. That was Virginia's year. But if they just get to that Final Four, some of this pressure's off. But they don't. They just miss out on the Final Four. 2020, they win the SEC by 3 games, and then COVID hits, and they don't get to play in the postseason. 2021 is the weird zombie COVID year, and everything just goes completely off the rails for them. And they have the worst record in like 94 years at Kentucky. And then you follow that with a great season. That team last year for 2 months was the best team in the country. They beat the 2 teams that played for the national title by a combined, I think it was 57 points away from home, North Carolina and Kansas. Won at Fog Allen in a rout. And you think this team is terrific. They have the National Player of the Year. A lot of good stuff actually happened last year for them. It was like a resurgent year. And then you face plant in the first round against St. Peter's, a 15 seed. And so, you've gone now 3 full NCAA tournaments without winning an NCAA tournament game, or 3 full years because there wasn't a tournament in 2020, which is just kind of unprecedented at Kentucky. And I don't think that they can I don't think people are going to abide a 4th straight year of no deep tournament run, because that's just what is expected at Kentucky. And even beyond the historical expectation of that, Cal set that bar for himself crazy high. He had that on the front end of his time at Kentucky. He goes to 4 Final Fours in 5 years, wins a title and plays for another, and almost has an undefeated season in another year. The expectation he set for himself was to be right there, at the end of March every year. And it's been now 3 years without that. And so I think there's huge pressure on this season when your team is loaded. There is no question, talent-wise and experience-wise, like they are loaded depth-wise. They're legitimately 10 deep, maybe 11 now. They added an 11th scholarship player a couple days ago, 5-star kid, reclassified 7-footer and enrolled early. So that's the level of talent they're working with at this point. There's huge pressure to just get it done, at least get deep. A national title, I think, probably cements Cal as he's like on the fence right now. Was it a really wildly successful tenure for Cal at Kentucky, or was it a little bit underachieving for the level of talent he had? I think if he wins the second title, those questions go away. But I think just getting back to a Final Four at least gets some people off his back, and then he's got the number one recruiting class coming in behind it, may relaunch Cal into a few more years here.
Let me shift to football quickly. I know you don't cover it day in, day out and that kind of thing, but I'm kind of more interested in just your general view of it. I've been sort of focused on Kentucky for a while because Ole Miss's schedule is set up where we're not going to know a whole lot about Ole Miss in the first month of the season. They play 4 kind of bad teams. They're going to be 4-0. They might be really good. They might not. We won't really know, but I think we'll know on October the 1st when Kentucky comes here. Will Levis is getting a lot of preseason hype from legitimate NFL people. It's a program that won a bunch of games the last couple of years. They've struggled against SEC West teams on the road, but there seems to be a lot of confidence in and around Lexington about this football team just from what you've been able to sort of absorb from being around people who are around the program. What are the expectations there?
Well, they're high. I mean, it's an interesting time because I think people are rightfully and reasonably super excited coming off a 10-win season, and you got a star quarterback like Levis back, and a handful of, your high-end players are back. But there are some major questions for them. They're replacing both tackles, and I'm not sure that they're 100% sold on any of those guys. There's talent there. I mean, they brought in a 5-star, massive human being, Keonta Goodwin. He's like 6'8", 330 or something, just a huge kid, but he's a freshman, and their other 2 options on both sides, both tackles are former 4-star recruits, and the talent level is there, but not the experience level. And then, wide receiver, they lost their star receiver, Wan'Dale Robinson, who was electric. And they, basically everybody that's going to be catching a pass this year is going to be new. And again, they recruited really well. They went out, got a great transfer from Virginia Tech, one of the ACC's top receivers, and they've got 4- and 5-star freshman wide receivers, one of the best wide receiver recruiting classes they've ever had. But those guys are freshmen, so are they going to be playmakers? And then in the secondary, they've been taking D2 and JUCO and former walk-ons who played at former walk-on DB who played at Mississippi State. I mean, he played a lot, but he started his career as a walk-on. They've been taking a ton of bodies, kind of warm bodies in the secondary, and that to me tells me they're worried about their secondary. And so there are questions, but Will Levis is a game changer. I think he was a kind of a revelation over the course of last season, especially in that new offense. They changed coordinators. Their offensive coordinator went back to be the coordinator for the LA Rams, where he came from, which tells you they had a good year at Kentucky under him last year. And then they brought in a guy from the 49ers to keep continuity of that style of offense. And he's Rich Scangarello, kind of a quarterback whisperer in the NFL, and he's obsessed with Will Levis. I mean, he told me that he was, more talented than any quarterback in either of the last 2 drafts. And there's been all this buzz. Some people have said, he might be the first quarterback taken. I don't know if you put him over, right, some of the other players even in the league, namely at Alabama, but he's good, and he's a dual threat. He can win with his arms and his legs. He's got a huge arm, and he's a very, very gifted runner. And I think that alone, with a bunch of kind of veterans back on a solid defense, gives you some hope. And Kentucky hasn't had kind of a game-breaking quarterback since Tim Couch, Jared Lorenzen, and that's been 20-plus years now. I guess Andre Woodson falls in that category, but I would say that Levis is a more dynamic player even than he was, and so I think all the hope is sort of pinned on this idea that we've won games the same way for a long time. Run the football, which they should be able to do. Chris Rodriguez is back, one of the leading rushers in the league. We've run the football. We've played good defense, and they think they can do that again. Plus, finally, they've got a real difference maker at quarterback. I think that's a huge reason for the hope and the hype for them.
What has he been able, just Stoops from the standpoint of the more big picture aspect around him? You mentioned that he felt like he had the juice to go back at Cal and whatnot, but how has he sort of energized just that fan base? Because, look, Cal was right. It's a basketball school, but what's it sort of been like just from a buy-in, administration, and fan base around Stoops as he's been consistent at the level that he is? Because they do feel like, and I think you know what I mean here, they feel like just an SEC football program when it almost felt like they were just trying to get to basketball season in most of the years past.
Yeah, it's interesting. They were this long-suffering fan base where they would put 70-some thousand people in the stadium if you would just win 6 games. If you were just a competitive team. In the Rich Brooks era, they were packing that place out to try to win 6 or 7 games in a season. And I think they went that way for a long time. Just give us a competitive football team and we'll support it. And you saw them turn out in big numbers. But then they got really beaten down. I showed up to cover Kentucky in 2011, Joker Phillips' second year, and they'd been on this run of, I think it was 5 straight bowl games, which was pretty impressive in Kentucky's modest history. Yeah, they go 5-7 that year, and then 2012 it just fell off a cliff. They went 2-10. The last Joker Phillips home game, I think the actual attendance at that game was like 15,000 people. It was sad. Stoops gets hired and they go 2-10 his first year. I remember, one of his assistants came off practice field one day. I said, "What you doing?" He said, "I'm going recruiting. This team is like the talent level is so bad." They had a secret scrimmage that summer against an OVC team and gotten their butts kicked. They had OVC talent, and crazy. Like they had 1AA or very low, 1A level talent in trying to compete in the SEC. They were, trying to recruit 2-star hidden gems, which Stoops has done. Stoops has gotten some 2-star hidden gems that turned into first-round draft picks there. But those are your, those need to be few and far between. Those are great when you find them, and every good staff does. But if your whole approach is like, we signed 22 stars, and we hope 10 of them turn into 4 and 5 stars. That you're probably not going to get that. A couple are going to work out, and most of them are going to be terrible. And so facilities were bad, the team was bad. You'd strung together these years, and even really Stoops' second and third years, they get off to these hot starts and then face plant. So they go, I think they started 5-1. one year and 4-2 the next, and then couldn't get to their 6th win. And so there's a number of years where the fan base that had been so good and long suffering kind of gave up. I think kind of gave up hope, and they went away in droves, and attendance was bad, and season tickets were down, and I just didn't think there was any real hope or interest in UK football anymore. And I think Stoops was very close to running out of time, and he got off to an 0-2 start in his 4th year. And it was like, this guy's getting fired. And then they went on a run. They made a bowl game, and it all got turned around. And now I would say just like the consistency of losing kind of beat them down, I think this consistency of winning and winning some big recruiting battles and signing great classes and going to big New Year's Day bowl games and beating a ranked Penn State, beating a ranked Iowa, having some star players that people know around the league know and are interested in and get drafted high. Everybody's excited about it again. Season ticket sales are way up again, and they've had a number of sellouts in the last couple of seasons under Stoops. And so, I think it's really been a Herculean effort to win them back because they had so checked out, I think, on the program, just thinking, okay, we're just never going to be a competitive SEC program. Certainly not a contender in the SEC East, and I think they feel that they are now.
Yeah, last thing, really appreciate the time. They've been to 4 straight bowl games. I mentioned won them all. You've got 3 Florida bowl games in there. Has he got his eye on any specific job? What's Stoops' future as this thing plays out, or is this one where he could actually be here for even longer? He's been here, 9 years or whatever now.
Yeah, I think it's possible he stays. I think he's really proud of what he's built, and he likes his life in Lexington. He's gotten into the bourbon business down here as well, and so there's a lot of things going right for him, and I think he's in his comfort zone. But I do think he would love to compete for a national championship. He's incredibly competitive. he wants to go. If he left, it would be for a place that has won and he still believes could win national championships. It would be one of, I think, the traditional sort of power type programs that's got just tons of money, that where there's no question that you're at a football school, by the way. I think Florida State was one of those that sort of fits that bill, but I don't think he believes as much in Florida State as a program anymore. That's where he came from as a coordinator. But somewhere like Texas, obviously Texas is hopeful they're finally actually back, for real back. But if Texas ever opened up again in the reasonable future, I think that's the type of a job. The one that doesn't really fit that category we're talking about, but I do wonder, is Iowa, because that's where he and his brothers played. It would allow him to still recruit Ohio and some of those places where he's really got those ties. And, the way the Big Ten is set up, like, can you be at least in the mix when you're at Iowa, to win your division and play in the Big Ten championship game? And if you get to the Big Ten championship game, then you're in the mix, to make the playoffs. And so Iowa is an interesting one for me. That surely that job's going to open up in the not so distant future. They've been with the same guy for a long time, and they'd be crazy to me not to come after Mark Stoops. So, I would say Iowa, and then just think about, traditional powerhouse programs that have won national titles, that maybe are trying to get back to the level they were before. I think would be on the list that could at least entice him. I don't know. Kentucky would probably do anything it could to keep him. I mean, they just threw John Calipari under the bus to appease his anger. So I think he could get just about anything he wants right now.
Cal, you're awesome at what you do. Big fan of your work. Appreciate your time this morning. I hope you have a great week.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
That's Kyle Tucker of The Athletic, kind enough to give us a lot of time here on a Tuesday morning. Let me be clear what I'm about to say, because I don't want this thrown at me.
What we got? Where are we going here?
I was talking to an NFL guy yesterday.
Will Levis?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was going on and on about Levis. And I was asking about Levis. And I was like, he wasn't that great last year. He was good. He did some good things. And he goes, you know who you just described?
Joe Burrow.
And I was like, come on.
Joe Burrow.
And he goes, there's a lot of Joe Burrow comps in NFL circles involving Levis. He goes, let me be clear for him. He goes, let me say this. I'm not ready to go there yet. He goes, I'm just telling you, in NFL scouting circles, and you got to keep in mind something here before people go wild. You got to remember something. And we talk about this all the time. Look at Ole Miss right now. Searching for a quarterback is obsessive.
Yes.
Okay? Because you can't win big without one. And in NFL circles, searching for that guy that can come be the guy who Joe Burrow's your franchise is a constant obsessive thing. That's just the name that some NFL people go, hey, could be. Loads of talent, tons of charisma, team guy, real cool, good with media, etc. They're watching him. The whole Levis thing as an NFL target is not media hype. It's not. It's not media hype.
They're fascinating because, I mean, it's obvious. You heard Carl talking about all the issues they do have. I mean, two brand new tackles in the SEC is a problem. I mean, that is an issue with the ends and the speed around the edges. You've got secondary issues, and the SEC throws the football. Those are all things that are very real. But I do really like their quarterback and really like the Robinson kid at running back. And
they're loaded at receiver.
They got the kid that Ole Miss wanted from Tag.
Barry and Browns had a big-time camp. Isn't that his name?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I was thinking about the transfer, though.
Oh.
The kid from Tech.
Okay.
Ole Miss was number 2 for him.
Yeah. They've done a lot of stuff. They're talented. They're good up front on defense. They're
that
always
damn
good
week
up
2
front
or
on
3
defense.
game against Florida is really interesting.
It is. And if they win it,
They're 4-0 or 5-0
We're going to do.
or whatever it is.
People
yeah.
are like, man, you guys talk a lot about Kentucky. I'm like, I don't think you realize how big that.
No,
game
that's why. Yeah, that's the reason Kentucky is on our minds. It's not we just picked out random East team who Ole Miss doesn't play.
Because look, Ole Miss could blow out Troy, Central Arkansas, Georgia Tech, and Tulsa, and what will we really know? Notice I didn't say think. No. What will we know? You won't know a lot. You'll probably think by that point, hey, this team's pretty good. This team's got a shot to be really good. But in the back of your mind, you're going to go, but have they played anybody? And Kentucky's going to come in, and if Kentucky's what I think they are, what most people think they are, that day we'll get an answer to that because they're going to play somebody that day.
Kentucky could not be very good and still go 8-4. I love their schedule.
Yes, their schedule's a
Love their
true.
schedule.
Walk through it.
Miami of Ohio, at Florida, Youngstown State, and Northern Illinois prior to Ole Miss. So Florida's their one game they could lose.
Yeah.
And then after that, I mean, it's the meat of the schedule, but there's not a game where they're going to be an underdog unless Tennessee is much better than we think. South Carolina, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Missouri, Vanderbilt.
Where are those games? Slow down. It's at
South Carolina's at home.
Okay.
State's at home.
Okay.
At Tennessee.
That's a challenge.
That's a big game.
Yeah, sure.
At Missouri.
Nah.
Vanderbilt at home.
Nah.
Play Georgia.
Georgia, sure.
At home.
Yeah.
And Louisville at home.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, if we do this with Ole Miss where you go.
They have 8 home games unless they've got a neutral site game I'm not aware of.
We do this with Ole Miss where you go, look, if they beat Kentucky, you're potentially off to the races. Well, if Kentucky beats Ole Miss, they're potentially off to the races, like being a top 6, 7.
They should be 7-0 going to Knoxville.
Yeah.
If they beat Ole Miss.
Yeah. Where you're talking about them, where if they beat Tennessee on the road, well, suddenly they're a win away. That's a big win. Don't get me wrong. But, hey, let Ole Miss get to 7-8-0, and people are going to start talking about that Alabama game in different tones.
Sure.
So it would be disingenuous.
Yeah, same thing.
It's disingenuous if you don't say, hey, Kentucky's in a similar boat.
Uh-huh.
Frankly, Kentucky and Ole Miss have a lot of similarities. The difference with Ole Miss compared to them is that Ole Miss is still trying to figure out the quarterback thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky's got to figure out how to protect him. But NFL people are really intrigued by him. I was like, more than Bryce Young? And they're like, well, here's the thing. Bryce Young plays with so much talent around him. They'll tell you they loved that Auburn drive last year because it's answered some questions about Bryce Young. But those same people go, if you gave Will Levis Alabama's talent, what would he look like? It's fair.
Can kind of run around college football a little bit. Before I do that, do you have anything else on the Ole Miss topic we were discussing prior, just so I don't forget?
Just back to the quarterback thing quickly. I just thought his answers about quarterback were interesting yesterday. It's a funny thing. Fans and a handful of media refuse to believe, and they might be right. I don't know. I'm not in Lane Kiffin's head, and he and I are not exactly exchanging phone calls, right? But I have to believe that if Lane knew who his quarterback was, he'd have done it by now.
There's no benefit to not.
Well, and now that school has started.
Nobody's transferring.
Yeah, now that school has started, I mean, the elephant in the room is no longer in the room. The elephant has left the room until at least December. Now, there is something, and I'm being careful how I word this. If you name Jackson Dart the starter and you're Luke Altmaier, you do have to start to ask yourself, do I play in more than 4 games this year? Do I give up a year of eligibility? Because I can get in the portal and go right away, and that can be a redshirt year and have 3 years to play 3. I don't know that in today's college football it matters. But if you're Luke, that is something that you have to think about. And if you're Lane, that's something that has to be in the back of your mind. That, look, if I don't name Altmaier my starter, he's almost assuredly going to get in the portal. And if he knows he's going to get in the portal, does he really want to play in more than 4 games?
Sure. And we're in Lane's head, and we're just doing a podcast here because we don't know the answer for sure. But I do, like Ginger says in the thread, she says, I kind of don't buy that Lane doesn't know who his quarterback is at this point. I think Lane knows who he wants his quarterback to be at this point.
Okay.
I think that he has a guy picked out that he wants to take the job who is ahead right now. But here's what you're doing also. if you name the quarterback and everybody on the team knows that he hasn't really separated, you potentially got locker room stuff. You've got to you need somebody to freaking emerge, and I think that's where he's frustrated right now. Is nobody has just gone absolutely the best guy where everybody knows it. I mean, Brian talked to Ryan Buchanan on the show that's up this morning on our podcast network. Ryan, including everyone else, knew Chad Kelly was the quarterback, even before Hugh Freeze named Chad Kelly the quarterback.
Yeah.
So
that's why we would laugh at the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So point being, you need it to be some level of obvious. So I think Lane knows what he's trying to hope to happen and probably will end up being the answer either way. But you sort of need it to play out organically, and it does not feel like there's been that level of consistent separation here for that to be the case in either direction.
Right. I mean, we keep – see, I'm trying to make sure that we're consistent with what we say because we always say, hey, Lane Kiffin's not really a coach speak guy.
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin kind of answers questions honestly, and if he doesn't want to answer a question, he just doesn't answer it. Like when you ask him, hey, like someone said, did anyone stand out in the scrimmage? He's like, I don't know. We practiced Sunday. We practiced today. It was a long time ago. That was his way of going, I'm not answering that. I don't want to answer. Did anyone stand out in the scrimmage? Of course. It was a football game. People stand out. He didn't answer that. Yet he doesn't blow off the quarterback questions. At some point, from a consistency standpoint, we have to go, maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe he doesn't know. He gave that anecdote. I mean, he didn't have to do that. He could have gone, yeah, it's just we're kind of not there yet. Did you guys know that Mars is the closest planet to Earth? I mean, he could have just done anything. But instead, he gives us an anecdote. Knox FaceTimes me every day and asks me and tells me. That was talking about it. When he does that, we're on year 3 now. When he does that, he's usually being, maybe always being genuine.
Yeah.
When Lane wants to dodge a question, he's really good at it. He just blows it off. Hey, what's an update on injuries? We don't talk about that. What about personnel? I don't like to single people out. Did any of the young guys, like there was a question yesterday. Here's another example of this. I know I'm belaboring this point, but what else are we doing? It's Tuesday morning. Somebody asked, because he said, hey, look, the offense had some big plays in the scrimmage, but a lot of defensive starters were out because of injuries or whatever. And so I think Suss asked, did any of the young guys who got an opportunity with the one defense because of injuries, did any of them stand out? I don't know. I hate to single anybody out. I had some guys do some good things. In other words, he blew Nick off on that question, and Nick would not object to that analysis. Yeah. Yet when the quarterback questions came, he answered them. I thought that was interesting. That's all. And maybe I'm reading way too much into it, but maybe I'm just getting myself ready for what he said, what he meant. But I thought that was compelling. He blew off some questions, and yet when he got those questions, he answered them. And so if you take him at his word, he doesn't know who his quarterback is. Yet he said, we still have plenty of time. He said, I asked, is there a chance if they stay close like this that you go into it as almost co-starters? And he said, no, not yet. Still got some time. We'll cross that bridge if we get to it. So that's not a no. That's a probably not.
Because you 100% knew it'd be easy to go, no, we're getting, we're just not there yet. We're getting close. We'll name a starter. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, sure. Yeah, and he pointed out that John Rice Plumlee was named the starter at UCF. He congratulated John Rice in his press conference, which I thought, some people go, he's being trolling. I'm like, no, he's not. He's congratulating a kid who he likes. He likes the kid.
And it is good for John Rice. He went to a place where he thought, frankly, he should have been able to play 2 sports. The NCAA screwed him last summer. And he probably has a very successful, fun rest of his college football career.
He fits that offense perfectly well. Yeah, it's like a glove, and he does not fit lanes, and everyone knows it.
Yeah.
So that's fine. But I thought that was interesting. And then, again, to circle back, and I guess to finish this really long, belabored point, if you aren't going to name Luke the starter, you want to be 100% sure, because if you're Luke and it's this close and you don't get it, if I'm advising Luke at that point, right, I have a question. Hey, do you just want to stay at Ole Miss no matter what? And if the answer is yes, then I'm like, okay, cool, don't worry about it. But if this no, I want to be a quarterback. All right, well, you need to think about what happens with you this year with games played. And I know people are going to get mad at me and I'm going to get attacked for this, and I shouldn't, but I'm being objective, and fans can get emotional. But if you're Luke and you're not going to be the quarterback, and you know that looking around the landscape next year, going to be an opening at Kentucky, going to be an opening at Mississippi State, could be an opening at Arkansas, could be an opening at I don't know where else. Missouri always has an opening. There are places you could go and be a quarterback in the SEC next season. And I got to think about your eligibility at this point if you're not the guy. And so I'm sure Lane is aware of that. If I can think
while also staying locked in, knowing you're just one sprained ankle at any moment.
Yeah. That's but you'd have to think about that if you're him. So that's what gets interesting about it. And until you are 100% sure that you're ready to go down that road, maybe you don't do it. So to your point, you might be exactly right. He might kind of know what he wants to do. But I was told, and I wrote this on the board, by people who've been out there, that the frustrating thing, if there's been frustration, and Lane referred to it as a positive thing, that both guys have played well. And again, I'm going to give him credit. I'm going to say, hey, maybe he's right. The frustrating thing has been one guy will have a really good day, and you start to think, hey, there's going to be some separation, and then that guy comes back the next day and has an inconsistent day. And it evens back out. I mean, we're 11 days out now. I don't think they could do it today. They could do it tomorrow, but he did not sound like a coach who was naming a starter imminently yesterday.
No, he didn't. But he also didn't put himself into a corner where if he names it on Friday, it's weird.
No, absolutely not.
Hey, but this week so-and-so has been really good. Insert John Doe, and here we are. Okay, cool.
Sure.
As opposed to the really weird Quinn Ewers deal at Texas here in the last few days, and look, I mean, I'm not even making fun. Like, Anwar Richardson's a really good reporter. He obviously had sources that he was very, very whatever, and he essentially said he would bet his mortgage on Hudson Card being named the starting quarterback at Texas. And Texas named Quinn Ewers the starting quarterback like 2 hours later.
Yeah.
Almost to the point of I'm wondering if Sarkisian is screwing with Anwar a little bit. Like, there was a weird – because here's what happened for anybody who hadn't been around this thing is – and this is where Lane talked about in the past that this can hit teams when you have the really high-profile transfer, you're paying out the wazoo, everybody's aware of what you're doing with Quinn Ewers. And now Lane said he was not doing this with Dart or anything like that, not getting down that road. But just in general, that it would potentially put coaches in weird spots. Everybody around the Texas program believes that Quinn Ewers is basically playing because he's the guy they're paying the most money to, the quarterback right now for Steve Sarkisian. Is that true or not? I mean, hell, I haven't seen their practices. I don't know.
Right.
But that's what I'm reading as I read around the league a little bit. All the industry or all the team sources and stuff had said Card was ahead. And then when they were doing a press conference in the Texas media room or whatever, they get done with interviews, bring 3 players, random players that don't really matter. And like the communications guy just goes, hey, sorry, got a note from Sark real quick. Quinn Ewers is the quarterback. And that was how they announced it. And it was like 2 hours after, everybody like sun silence, like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
But that was it. That was literally how they announced the starting quarterback at Texas.
Here's the backup defensive tackle. Now ask questions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they didn't bring him out in the press conference. It was like, random guard, tackle guard or something. It just, look, maybe they go win 11 games and whatever. There is something about that program that everything about it just goes sell, 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 and nothing turns me the other way. Because when I heard Steve Sarkisian, I thought, that's a guy that has a chance to be a really good coach. I actually thought it was a pretty good hire for what they sort of needed. He's done a poor job at this point. Like, just managing that hellaciously difficult program to manage. He has not done a very good job with it. The board, the boot, everybody's still kind of running the asylum a little bit over there, and he's just holding on for dear life. I mean, they're interesting just from the standpoint of it looks like a car crash any moment. We want to make sure we're watching when impact happens.
Well, and that and the fact that they're recruiting at such a high level
that too.
For next year beyond just the obvious. I mean, I'm not referring to only Arch Manning. They have a really talented class coming in from a rankings standpoint. What that's worth, I don't know. Beats me. I haven't gone to watch those kids play, so I'm not. My answer to, hey, have you ever seen so-and-so? Nope. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. That's Texas is weird. They've always been weird. They can't get the boosters out of the way. And now NIL has made the boosters
powerful,
a necessity.
Yes. Look,
Texas needed.
No one thought Quinn Ewers wasn't going to start. Okay, let me make that clear. Or going into the year, like anybody with any sense of a brain knew that they were going to have to basically start Quinn Ewers.
One would think.
But what some of this stuff means is he hasn't looked worth a crap, or at least better than Card, who couldn't beat out Casey Thompson.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
they've had some quarterback issues in Austin, if you will. So
well, they've had a lot of issues in Austin. I mean, again, go back and watch last season. I mean, not only did they lose to Kansas, when they played an SEC team, they played a good SEC team, but not a great one, a good one. They got routed. That was a rout. And it was a destruction at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
I mean, people, if Jefferson doesn't make a bad read in the second quarter of that game, that is 40-something to nothing. It was a blowout. That team's getting ready to jump into the SEC. That program needs a Nick Saban. It needs a power guy to come in.
It's always needed that.
And there aren't many Nick Sabans out there.
He flirted with it once.
Oh.
Went down the road, didn't he?
I think they could have had him. They screwed it up because they couldn't surrender the power. It's the underappreciated part of what happened at Alabama is there was some pushback. And finally, after Rodriguez turned them down, they just said, screw it, let's do it. And it's kind of worked out. But that's what Texas needs. I mean, you can talk about fit and hot offensive, blah, screw that. You need somebody who can come in and shut the doors and say, this is how we're going to do it. This is how it's going to be. And you tell the boosters, you'll talk when we want you to talk. You'll be heard from when we want you to be heard from.
And Sarkisian has tried to go there, but it's not his normal personality all the time. So he's inconsistent. He backs off and up and back and up and up and up. And
well, just because you worked for Nick Saban doesn't make you Nick Saban.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Billy Napier would have been a much better fit at Texas.
I don't know if he would have had the juice, though, to actually get them out of the way.
To circle back to Kyle Tucker, you'd have to think about a Mark Stoops. Somebody knows what the hell he's doing, can run a program. And make no mistake, from a PR standpoint, in the eyes of kind of some ADs and stuff out there, him standing up to Calipari earned brownie points.
Oh, sure.
Oh, I mean, this guy's a man's man.
I mean, I didn't really think about it from that level. Comment a good point. The AD backs the football coach in a football-basketball fight at Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, look, if you listen to Kyle, I'm pretty good at Between the Lines 101. He was referencing specific human beings as the next guy.
He had an idea.
He knows something.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to tell us, but he gave us more than a few hints.
That Barnhart's got
a very short list.
Might be.
Yeah, 1 to 3 names.
Yeah.
And would they take it? Of course, everybody take it. It's the best job.
It's the best job. You'll get what you need.
Yeah.
Look, Cal's been, again, I looked it up while we were talking to him. He's been to one Final Four since 2015.
Yeah.
Actually, none since 15. It was 15.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No.
Not good enough.
Not what they want.
He's a lot of flash and not a lot of substance lately. Couple different things. Heisman Trophy odds. C.J. Stroud, the Ohio State quarterback, plus 200. You got to go 2-1 to pick Stroud to win the Heisman. You give any care about that? He is a more than double favorite over Bryce Young, who is plus 430.
Okay.
You can bet 100 and win 430 on Bryce Young if you would like.
Give me some other names. I'll take. Give me some lines.
Caleb Williams plus 700.
Nah.
Trevion Henderson, running back in Ohio State, plus 2,000.
Not bad.
The man who is getting the most money on him in the Heisman Trophy betting to this point is Will Anderson at plus 2,200.
Oh, that's the line. I love that line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a bad bet.
It's the most popular Heisman pick. The larger bets are on Stroud, who threw for blah, 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 blah. But more than 20% of the money is on Will Anderson. He is, let's see, where is it? I had it up a second ago. his odds have gone in the offseason from 60-1 to 22-1 because of the money. And, yes, he has drawn more bets and more money wagered at DraftKings than anyone else. Now, remember, only one defensive player has ever won the Heisman Trophy. That's Charles Woodson in 1997 over Peyton Manning. But Will Anderson at 22-1 right now because he's the best player in the country. Doesn't mean he's going to win the Heisman, but he's the best player in the country.
Yeah. What's the line on Levis?
I don't have one right here, I don't think. This is only the favorite. So the only other extra 2 lines I have is Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back at Alabama who transferred from Georgia Tech at plus 2,400.
I love that.
And then Bijan Robinson, the running back at Texas, plus 2,500. They're not going to win enough, so it doesn't matter.
Hey, our friends at Blue Delta are excited to announce they'll be hosting Mustache the Band Friday, October the 14th for the Square Jams after party. Come out to support the Rebels on the Oxford Square at Square Jams, then complete your night at the Lyric with the folks from Blue Delta Jeans, the world's most powerful 90s country band. Ticket packages are on sale now. Some tickets include jeans and some don't, but all include admission to the concert and an open bar. To book, just visit bluedeltajeans.com/afterparty, and they'll see you there.
We didn't talk about this when it happened. We're both selling, I think, on Scott Frost in Nebraska anyway. But his comment about his lineman throwing up has not gone away now in like 10 days. And he continues to do nothing symbolizing a hot seat coach who actually has it figured out right now.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. He's commenting on his offensive line coach of the day and how tough and all this crap he is, and says that his guys are in shape, but he has 10 to 15 vomits per practice. And it's like, is that supposed to be a good thing? It's a lie. There's no way they're actually having 10 to 15
because if they are, one of two things. One, they're either not in shape, and that reflects on your program, or two, you're abusing them.
Yes.
Because if super in-shape guys are throwing up 10, 15 times a practice, we got issues.
It defies logic. It sort of went away for a couple days after the immediate, like, you're an idiot, whatever. We're all moving on. And then some NFL writers sort of went, we've been to a lot of NFL training camps and have never seen 10 total vomits over the course of a 20-year career, actually. So
because it's not the way you practice anymore. That's not how you...
So is he just being stupid and joking, or does he legitimately think that running the hell out of his team is making them tougher?
It just tells me he doesn't get it. Like Pat Fitzgerald probably could just take them out of their misery Saturday.
He could.
Just end it mercifully.
Just move on.
Just lose to the Wildcats and be done.
There's probably a part of Trev Alberts, the Nebraska athletics director, who wants Northwestern to win this game Saturday, and just
sure.
He probably is very much the same place that the Arkansas AD Jeff Long was in Oxford that day, when he looked very sad that Arkansas had won the game in Oxford that afternoon.
He was sick.
Yes. He wanted the Rebels to hold on to that lead.
Yeah. That was a weird elevator.
Well, it's where I believe you either heard this later or you'd heard it beforehand, but Arkansas had essentially rented out their suite and couldn't find enough people to fill it.
Yeah.
In Oxford. They didn't have enough boosters that wanted to fly over private and just go to the game.
Yeah.
They literally couldn't get enough people there.
And they were losing that game, and Jeff Long was like, this is it. This is Waterloo. Yes.
And they came back.
And then, they came back, and Ole Miss lost, and Arkansas won, and Bielema was running around like he'd won the Super Bowl, and Jeff Long looked like someone had just shot his puppy. Jeff Long was having a very difficult time because if you remember, our rival site asked me to go get video so I went to that press conference, and you handled the Ole Miss press conference. And I was in there, and the body language was weird. It was not the body language of a victorious AD.
A guy who was sort of on top of the world from an AD standpoint, Jeff Long had a lot of clout, and he is out of athletic administration now.
Was kind of viewed as like a preeminent AD, and then he made a couple bad hires.
When he went to Kansas.
Yeah, well, the Miles thing, and that did him. And didn't he?
It's kind of complicated.
And wasn't he tied up in the Beatty thing? What happened
with
David Beatty? It seems like he was. I'm just touching on a couple of these because I don't have them previously recorded to be fully transparent. A-Stock Auctions is a Nashville-based online auction company with the mission to provide customers the power to name their price. All items at A-Stock Auctions start at just $1. That's right. Every item starts at just $1. Shop now at astock.bid or download their app. Name your price on thousands of items from big-name retailers. A-Stock Auctions has multiple locations around Nashville that offer local pickups, so don't miss out. Want it, bid it, win it.
Yeah, he was mostly criticized for his not vetting miles and knowing any of it.
Yeah.
Was the reason he was run out, essentially, was he had poor background checks, which is valid.
That's an issue. When you're a Power 5 AD.
He stepped down, but they fired him.
Yeah, when you're a Power 5 AD, your football coaching hires, your men's basketball coaching hires are what determine whether you're successful or not.
Yeah, he was the first ever chairman of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee.
Yeah. You can screw up a soccer hire. They'll get over it. You can mess up a track and field hire. People get over it, as long as it's not scandalous. Frankly, when you hire those people, you say, look, do the best you can. Do not get in trouble. But when you make a football hire, if it goes bad, it's on you. You make a men's basketball hire and it's a disaster, it's on you. The rest of it, it's okay. And a few places baseball registers close to that, but not many. Kansas, you can make a bad baseball hire and nobody's ever going to care. But you can't have a football program that's losing and getting terrible, scandalous headlines. That's inexcusable, and that'll get you fired. And it did.
The SEC potentially could not have, barring, they could have a couple, but there's a way to get to the league without any changes from a coach standpoint. But it feels like every league's got 2 or 3 where it's like, whoa, no, we're about to have nationally a ton of turnover. But
I think at the end of the season, the deal is, it's when you look at it today and you go, okay, well, this team could lose whatever. Those aren't emotional losses. They're paper losses. Like Mississippi State comes to mind. Missouri comes to mind.
Yeah, sure.
If you told Missouri fan today, hey, you're going 5-7. Okay, whatever. We'll just roll it out. But then when you lose the 7, like at the end, you get blown out by Tennessee, and then you lose to Arkansas on that Friday or whatever, and you're like, this doesn't work. I hate this guy. It's more emotional. That's where the decisions get made. Look what happened with Matt Luke. That was
he was fine even after.
It worked, but it was emotional.
Leach is out with a loss to Ole Miss and what number of wins?
5 or fewer, maybe even 6. And
you think you could get in at 6 and it'd be okay at 6?
Well, so here's the thing, and I'm not trying to bash on Mississippi State here because they know the answer better than I do. Are they positioned from an NIL standpoint to do better than Mike Leach?
They're very far behind inside the SEC. I've been told by people who would know.
That's what I've heard. Like way behind.
Yes, they only actually got anything even in the realm of the Grove Collective or something to that infrastructure. They've only even had operational a couple weeks, maybe a month, something like that.
Yeah, so the question is, who can you get? Who can you get? And I think in today's era, you better know that answer before you make a move. Does Will Hall win enough at Southern Miss to move the needle at Mississippi State yet? Feels like that's still a year or two away. I know of some young coaches out there that would have to think about it because of the SEC money, but at the same time, they would go, gosh, I think if I just stay here another year or two, I can Billy Napier this. I can get a better gig.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because, look, if in that division, and you're about to add Texas and Oklahoma, and we can rip on Texas all we want, but Texas is going to have players, and if they ever get the right guy, they'll figure it out. Oklahoma's going to be a good program. Look at the rest of the SEC. Just look at the West right now, today.
Sure.
Alabama's dominant. Texas A&M is whatever they are, but they're not a pushover. Nobody looks at A&M and goes, W.
Sure.
Okay. LSU just got Brian Kelly. Most people think that they're coming back. Ole Miss is Bill Connolly has Ole Miss in the top 10.
Yeah, 9, I think.
Ole Miss just won 10 games. Lane Kiffin's got them rolling. They're recruiting at a pretty high level. Sam Pittman's got Arkansas winning more than they usually do. They're recruiting at a pretty high level.
Sure.
All of those programs are far more invested from an NIL standpoint than State. It feels like I'm leaving somebody out, but Auburn. They're either going to win and get rolling, or they're going to make a big-time change in November. And so the odds of Auburn just staying down for a long – history says that they won't stay down.
Yeah.
They'll come back. So if you're a coach out there, it's the worst job in the West. You have to ask yourself, okay, how much worse?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually think Billy Napier is going to win at Florida relative to whatever the job allows. I don't think it's a great job, but I think he will win. And I would pick him over Tennessee to be the number 2 team in the East behind Georgia for a while. I think Florida's the pick there. Could be wrong, but that is what I think.
I'd like to see another season.
Okay.
Kind of like to see what Florida looks like.
Sure.
Not wins.
Oh, look, they might suck this year.
But I want to see what they look like. Now, they are recruiting pretty well, inside out right now.
They appear to have a pretty good little structure going.
He's really good. He knows what he's doing. I know he sounds different and acts different, but if you talk to coaching people, they all pretty much rave about Billy Napier.
Because we had Kyle on, we started with some basketball. We don't do a ton of that in the preseason. We'll say I pulled up a top 25 rankings for the preseason for men's basketball just quickly. The top 15 in reverse order: Indiana at 15, Villanova at 14, Auburn at 13. I didn't realize the Tigers were that high.
Yeah.
Auburn at 13.
They're going to be good.
Tennessee at 12.
Yep.
Texas at 11. UCLA at 10. Arkansas at 9. Baylor at 8. Creighton at 7.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Kansas at 6. Duke at 5. Kentucky at 4. Houston at 3.
Mm-hmm.
Gonzaga at 2. And North Carolina at number 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. About 4 to 5 top 15 SEC programs. The league's just going to be a bear. Kentucky's elite. Very, very good. Arkansas's super young with that talent, but it is elite talent. How quickly he can put all that together. I think Tennessee's underrated right there. Auburn's going to be really good. And then they didn't mention Alabama, but I think Alabama's got a chance to be a really good team. And then here's another one is Texas A&M. If you talk to people around the league, they think A&M's going to make a jump in hoops.
Bama's at 20. That's it for the SEC.
Okay. Yeah.
North Carolina bringing back 3 double-digit scorers and a big-time transfer from Northwestern.
Yeah.
Among their starting 5. Gonzaga actually is having to turn it over a little bit. Their rosters.
He's just got where he's so good at it. He can recruit.
They have Timmy back, but
yeah, they can recruit elite players, and they play in that league out there where you get lots of time to sort of develop it. But they play a great schedule. I mean, they'll play lots of teams. And he's good.
It's a jump up, but they've got the big kid, the player from Chattanooga that transferred, Malachi Smith.
Yeah.
So that's anyway, a little basketball there. You
proud of me? We had Tucker on, and I didn't ask about Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I wanted to, almost did.
I had 4 or 5 more hoops questions, and I thought we've got to get to football.
Are people going to?
Yeah, if I actually had an hour with him, I would have stayed on basketball for like another 20 minutes because I had some hoop stuff that I wanted to get to.
People were going to need some better help.
They were. That was probably.
By the way, if you've been listening to MPW Digital over the years, you know that I'm a big fan of mental health therapy. So is Chase. I've needed it at times, probably need it every day. And during the pandemic, my girls utilized therapy as well. There's no stigma. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Taking care of your mind is just smart. How well would you take care of your car if you had to keep the same one your entire life? And that's how our brains work. So why don't we treat them that way? How we care for our minds affects how we experience life. So it's important to invest time and care into keeping them healthy. There are plenty of ways to support a healthy brain, like learning a new language, taking power naps. There's also BetterHelp online therapy. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat-only therapy sessions. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy. You can be matched with a therapist in 48 hours. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/MPW. That's betterhelp.com/MPW.
So I haven't read the full story, and I mean, we're not talking about it now. We're kind of wrapping up, but this whole thing, I guess it's finally getting publicized, and there's a documentary on it, but Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney owning this team in Wales is fascinating.
It is.
There's a story in The Athletic. There was a huge story in the New York Times this week about it. Again, there's a documentary detailing year one or whatnot, but it's kind of neat. Something. I don't know what the word is, but it makes a ton of sense for the team. I mean, that.
You know what's interesting here is that we keep doing this, hey, soccer's never going to be a big deal in America, and everyone talks MLS when they say that, right?
Sure.
You know what's becoming clearly a really big deal in America? You see it on Twitter. The English Premier League is becoming a big deal in America. It has become, for football, people who like both sports, they're so excited about like next weekend because the soccer games start at 6 in the morning.
Look at them both.
You get the
doubleheader,
the noon game in
yeah.
England, then you get the 8 o'clock game, and then you turn to like game day or whatever, and then you get college football. And then on Sunday, it's the same thing. You get the Sunday morning game, and then you get your NFL. And for people who love both sports, they're like, man, this is a day.
We're in. Yeah.
And those English Premier League games, if you like soccer, and more people in our country do, I know there are people that still hate it, and you're going to, well, it's fine. Those English Premier League games are really, really good. And once you get a team, and now that Peacock is streaming, you can watch Liverpool every game. You can watch Chelsea every game. Man City, Man U, Tottenham, Arsenal, whatever. You can watch all those teams every game, and they are all.
You can watch every game in the entire EPL?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're now building. They're building fan bases over here. And you see more and more people from America, the wealthy, wanting to get invested in those teams and stuff like that. I think that might be what becomes the big deal over here is EPL teams, not MLS teams.
Well, that's fascinating.
You see a lot of it. A lot of it. I mean, I was blown away that day in Vegas watching Chelsea and all the kids who I'm going to guess didn't make the trip over from London.
Yeah.
Decked out in the Chelsea gear.
Yeah.
Thought it was pretty interesting.
They played a Mexican team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. At 57,000 people on a hot night in July.
Yeah. All right. Thanks to Kyle Tucker for all of his time today. Again, covers rebelgrove.com. But yesterday's media opportunity, another one tomorrow. Nothing today on that front. And we've got week 0 games here coming up this weekend.
McCready and Siskey today at 2 p.m. If you want to follow along with us and join the stream. Jay Tate and I taped Greatest Pod in the South, episode 187. That's up where you get your podcasts. We taped that yesterday. It's up. Put it up last night. So.
Rippy has a show up this morning, too.
Yeah.
He has week 2 with Ryan Buchanan, former Ole Miss quarterback. So that is in the feed as well. And we'll be back tomorrow morning. Take care. Have a good day.